What is happening, everyone? I hope everyone is well on this fine day. We are back on my channel today with a tier list of my favourite director, Stanley Kubrick. We're going to be doing a tier list of every single one of his feature-length films, not including his shorts, just his feature-length films, all 13 of them. If you haven't been here before, feel free to hit the subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment, let me know what your top 3 would look like. We're going to split them into 4 tiers today. Bottom tier Kubrick, very good tier, great tier, and top 3. It's worth noting that, of course, I have this internal bias for Kubrick's filmography. I love most of them, the majority, so even the very good tier are some films that I have a lot of love for. But there are some that are certainly, in my eyes, subpar in compared to the rest of his filmography. And this is just my personal preference, my personal opinions, and I do like doing these longer form content videos as well. So I can go in a little bit more into detail, especially about films that I love. You know, when it comes to Kubrick, there is quite a few. So it really becomes a point where it's going to be best for me to push on with you know a longer tier list form video and then go into some sort of few little details here and there. So hopefully everyone enjoys, and like I say, I like all of them. Let me know what your ranking would be down below. The actual films are off my screen. I basically randomized the order of them completely, so I actually don't know what's going to come up, to be honest. But we are starting with Fear and Desire. Now, for me, this is bottom tier Kubrick. This was obviously his debut feature film. I believe it was only about 60 minutes length. I haven't watched this in a few years, in fairness, but from what I remember, it's not very good. It's a little bit derivative of other films. It shows Kubrick in his very, very early years. I believe this would have come out in maybe the early 50s, I'm going to say 51, 52, when he was probably around his sort of maybe 23, 24 years old. And you can tell from the film. And I think this is probably his worst film, in my opinion anyway. But there's not really much to go into with that. You know, it's a debut. It's not a great debut, but it's one that is there either way. I believe this is The Killing we have next. Oh, Killer's Kiss. Okay. Killer's Kiss is a little bit better. I actually think Killer's Kiss is a pretty decent film, all things considered. But again, I do think it struggles from not being that entertaining, which is, you know, the primary thing I do look for when it comes to watching films. I do think it offers a great deal in terms of subtext, but again, I think it belongs with Fear and Desire in terms of kind of the bottom end of Kubrick's filmography. Probably his least popular films, these two, I would argue. It's quite random that they've come up first. I would say that they're probably his least watched. And I've watched them both once. I probably wouldn't watch them again, which says a lot, because the majority of Kubrick's I would. We have The Killing next. Okay, The Killing's an interesting one. I think The Killing is actually not underrated, I wouldn't say, but underappreciated maybe in Kubrick's filmography. It wouldn't, you know, it definitely wouldn't get into the top 3. It wouldn't be great, but it definitely wouldn't be in the bottom tier. I think it's a very good Kubrick film. I think it's one of his earlier ones. I think it maybe came out mid to late 50s, maybe 55, 56 from what I remember, but that could be a little bit off. I think it's a thrilling crime film. It's quite short from what I remember, maybe around that sort of 90-minute mark. I think the script is brilliant. I think it's clever. I think it's enthralling. I think it gets you off your seat. I think it's a really good watch. Nothing revolutionary, especially in terms of that genre, especially around the 50s time. But I think it does the job well, and I would definitely recommend it. I think it's, well, obviously, what we're going to do as well with this one is I'm going to sort the tiers. I'm going to obviously put them where I want to now, and then at the end I'll like switch it back and forth. So like this might be the bottom end of the very good tier, and then we'll see what rest to come up. But in terms of The Killer, I think it's actually a really, really good film. Okay, Paths to Glory is next. Paths to Glory for me is definitely up there with his best. I think it's a phenomenal courtroom drama, which has so much in terms of, if you're interested in war history in general, it's brilliant. It obviously shows, you know, it shows a perspective from a side we don't often see as much during that period, which I think is, you know, definitely interesting. I think the courtroom drama aspect, and especially the Kirk Douglas as the lead role. I love Kirk Douglas. I think he was an incredible actor, and I think he probably his best role I've seen from him anyway. I haven't seen all his films or whatever, but I think it's probably one of his best. And I think as a courtroom drama, as a anti-war film, I think this is right up there. I don't know if this would go into the top 3 for me. I think this would probably be the higher end of great tier. Obviously, we'll work this out down the line. But I think it would probably be the highest end of great tier for now. One of the best courtroom dramas I've ever seen. A film that I can kind of a Kubrick that I can watch over and over again, because I think he manages to balance the comedic aspects with the anti-war message really, really well, which is something that you see from Kubrick a lot. Some of the shots in this are incredible. You've got kind of the Colonel walking down the trenches with the music in the background and stopping it. It's kind of satirical in a way, which is what we have come to see from Kubrick, which I think is something that I really, really enjoy about his work. And I think a lot of people do as well. So Paths of Glory is, near that highest end of his filmography for me. Okay, Spartacus is next. I've seen that one. Spartacus is hit or miss for a lot of people. I think it was kind of a big epic for him. It's a long, from what I'm not mistaken, maybe 3 to 3.5 hour piece, kind of period piece, this historical epic, which is, has many of a comedic aspect in there as well, which again, you'll love or hate. Again, Kirk Douglas is really, really good in this role. I think it has some phenomenal sequences, and I think around this time, I think it came out maybe in the 1961, 1960, around the time Ben-Hur came out, around the time that these big action Roman epics, or whatever, the period was, and I think it definitely is serviceable. I wouldn't have it around that level, but I think it was a very, very good film. I would put it above The Killing, not much higher. I do think it's not his most enjoyable, and I think it lacks. I don't think the script is the best I've seen from Kubrick's films, in my humble opinion. But I do think it's a big old war epic, gets you excited. It's a dad's favorite. I've tend to found, and yeah, again, it serves a purpose, and it's phenomenal to look at, and there are some really, really good sequences, and also funny sequences as well. We've got Lolita next. Okay. Lolita is obviously the adaptation, and I haven't actually read the original material, so I don't know as much about it. I just know the kind of whereabouts and what was changed. I know that it is Kubrick's most controversial in terms of work, and I do believe I read an interview that he actually regretted making it, or at least regretted some of it. I think it's a well-made film. I think technically it's brilliant. I think it offers a lot, but I also think it's very, very uncomfortable to watch. It's not something I'd be willing to watch again, not even for just the reason of primary uncomfort, by seeing how disgusting it really is, the age gap and the narrative that has been told. But then also I think it's overly long and quite dull for majority of that. I think the cinematography is great. I think the use of composition within Kubrick's films, we know, is very, very high. It's a very, very high tier of filming, the aspect ratio, the style. And the performances in this are really, really good as well. I think it's quite uncomfortable, and I think it's overly long, and I don't think it's, I felt the narrative was too sparse to earn the runtime that it had. I'm going to put it in the bottom tier, but it's going to be kind of the higher end of the bottom tier. I know a lot of people like it. I personally think it's fine. I don't hate it. I don't think it's a bad film. It's not my favourite. I probably wouldn't watch it again. We have Dr. Strangelove next. Okay, this might be, I'm going to say, controversial. I know a lot of people who really, really love Dr. Strangelove. It's not my favourite. I think it offers a lot in terms of a US-based political satire. I think it's one of the best I've seen. I also think it's the kind of quirky and wacky characters work really well, and I think the dialogue and script overall is fantastic. And I also think the characters are memorable, which is what you need in a satire such as this. It's not the best political satire I've ever seen, but it's definitely up there. It doesn't quite hit home with me. I don't think it's his best in terms of not only the comedic aspects, but I don't think it's his best script. I think it's very, very clever, and I think kind of the anti-war approach that he has within this, I can see why a lot of people love it. It just didn't really work for me. It's not really something where, it's not like a Lolita or a Spartacus where I can point out an individual piece of why it didn't work. It just doesn't work for me as much as others. I would put it in the very good tier. I think it's a very, very good film. Very, very, very solid, very clever. I'd probably have it the higher end of very good tier for now. It's very, very good. It just doesn't work for me as quite as much as it does for other people. With 2001: A Space Odyssey next. I think, this has to go in the top 3 for me. I think this is a remarkable piece of cinema that, set a new standard. We've seen how many films influenced George Lucas, for example. Credited 2001: A Space Odyssey is the main reason why Star Wars was created. I think it set a new trend, a transcendent style at the time. It revolutionized sci-fi. It's the point in time when really people started to take sci-fi as a genre seriously, which up to that point, we had Metropolis, for example, but really 2001 kind of escalated the point in where sci-fi was taken seriously and as a narrative and as serious art form within the medium. Visuals still stand up today. I know a lot of people don't like the kind of medial pace, it's very patient in the way that it shows things. But I personally love it. I personally get, a vast amount of enjoyment from it. I think not only is the use of the set design, the practical effects just amazing to look at. I think it has one of the best opening sequences I've ever seen in my life. Out of the thousands of films, over 2,000 films I've seen, I think it has one of the best endings I've seen as well. And I just think this offers so much in terms of evolution, in terms of showcasing the world, showcasing humanity, showcasing the planet, and showcasing what was really possible within a period when people thought it wasn't possible as well. 1968, I think it came out, and it really did, like I say before, set a new trend and revolutionise sci-fi cinema for the best. And I think a lot of the sci-fi greats we have now, especially when you're looking at the modern ones, which a lot of people seem to love, the Interstellars, you've got from the late 70s, the 80s, you've got the Star Wars films, you've got even things like The Matrix and Blade Runners. They wouldn't really be possible if it wasn't for 2001: A Space Odyssey, in my opinion. So it has to go in that top three, and not just because I think it's incredibly influential and a vast, one of the best technical filmmaking accomplishments I've ever seen, but because I really enjoy it, and I can safely say that I'll watch that over and over. I think that is a massive thing for me, is actually my personal connection with the film and my enjoyability. And with 2001, for me, I think it's something where I watched when I was younger. I didn't really understand it, as most people wouldn't when they're 14, 15 kind of age, whatever it might be, and then kind of tried it again 3 to 4 years ago, fell in love with it and watched it a couple of times since, and I just think it's a joy. And I'm definitely, I think they're showing it in my cinemas again soon. I'll definitely be watching that because I'm really, really excited for it. Okay, let us see what we've got next. Again, this was in completely randomized order, so I didn't know it came up. Otherwise, I'd be able to kind of plan it out beforehand, which isn't as fun. Clockwork Orange is next. Clockwork Orange is an interesting one. I personally would put it in the great tier. It would be behind Paths of Glory. It wouldn't be in the top three. I think Clockwork Orange is, again, similar to Lolita, one of his most controversial works, especially at the time. You can watch Clockwork Orange now and think, okay, it's not as bad, but I think it is a damning deconstruction of society and the way we treat people, and also institutionalization. And I think it offers so much. I think the performances, especially from Alex thingy, forgotten his name off the top of my head, but yeah, you know what I mean, who plays obviously DeLarge. I think his performance is just so unique in the way that everything is showcased, and I think it's just such a dreamlike style that you can really invest into, and you kind of get to the point where we don't see a lot of films where your primary protagonist is also your antagonist of the film, and kind of seeing the relay of society and kind of the damning of how institutionalization worked, especially around that time and that period, and the effect it can have on people, especially with the ending and the sequences we see. I think it's a very, very clever film, and I understand why people don't like it, because it is very out there. Not even in a way that it's out there because of the graphic, I guess, scenery it shows at points, which it does. There is sequences which aren't for everyone. I think it's a lot less now, but when it came out, 1971, it was around the time it got banned for a while, understandably so, because the filmmaking pieces then didn't show as much of that, especially in terms of, I won't say it on camera, but exactly what scenes I'm speaking about. However, I just think it offers so much, and I think it's so unique. It's one where you love or you hate, realistically, because it is quite unique. Not even, like I said, just because of the graphical approach, just because it's so dreamlike. You have to kind of invest into this weird kind of sci-fi dystopian society in which things are unlike anything you've seen. But I think Clockwork Orange is fantastic. I would have it really high up there in the great tier. But again, it's not for everyone, and I completely understand that. We have next Barry Lyndon. Okay, so if you didn't know about this before, I actually have Barry Lyndon as Kubrick's best work. I'll reveal that straight away. There's a few reasons for this, but Barry Lyndon is, for me, just everything when it comes to cinema. I think it offers everything. I think you're seeing this protagonist go, and you're kind of watching his life story unfold of him going from nothing, Redmond Barry, whatever it might be, to the notorious Barry Lyndon, who is high up the social ladder, the social chain, and him kind of scamming his way through this. And I just think it's perfect in a way that not only is it one of the best looking films I've ever seen, every shot, every sequence, you've heard this before, looks like a painting, looks like it's painted on screen. And Kubrick's sort of brilliant use of utilizing natural lighting and natural light to showcase the colors, showcase the incredible costume design on display. The use of kind of what we've seen from many Kubrick films is the use of facial expression, and the use of, you know, how facial expression can actually be the strongest form of communication. And it's not often you see a director that can use that, and you can kind of tell exactly what the characters think and mean at the time. With points in this film is quite lesser in terms of actually dialogue, and it's the use of kind of these stupid facial expressions from one to another. And I think not only is it incredibly impressive that this film is perfect on a technical basis, you know, you're looking at the score, you're looking at the cinematography, you're looking at the even just the production design, costume design is perfect for this period piece. But I think to find a plus 3 hour historic, you know, period piece around this kind of era with the story and show, it's rare to find this kind of film and it not be dull, it not be bland, it not be boring. And I understand some people think it is, and I think that's completely fine. You can think whatever you think about film because it's completely and entirely subjective. There is no objectivity that is in an art form in general. But yeah, I think for me there is no point where it gets boring. There's no point where it gets dull. It's everything. It's seeing his life pan out, how he gets from A to B, you know, him joining and him leaving, him getting into trouble, him getting into fights, whatever that might be. And I just think it's one which everything is just perfect in my eyes. And I know that's not the common number one, maybe. It's definitely high up there for most people. I also think it might be not in the community of avid film lovers, but in a general sort of TikTok, YouTube community. I don't know if it's watched as much as others, especially as much as 2001 and The Shining, which obviously The Shining we'll speak about. But yeah, for me, Barry Lyndon is really, really high up there. Well, it's number one, and I think it's, you know, in my eyes, one of my favourite films of all time, so of course it's going to be there. With The Shining next, and just to reveal, this is my top 3. The Shining is in my top 3 as well. One of the best horror films ever made, in my opinion. One of the most influential. Not only that, but it features some of my favourite acting performances ever. We can get into the Shelley Duvall stuff, but I actually think she was really, really good. I know a lot of people don't, but I think she did the job perfectly. Jack Nicholson is just to die for in that role. He is that good. And I think everything about the film, it has some of the best visuals I've ever seen. When you talk about the use of composition and the work behind the camera, The Shining is just a perfect example of that. There is so much to The Shining, and I think it's a film where, similar to the subtext provided in Clockwork Orange and Paths of Glory, where in 2001, and a lot of Kubrick's films, I think Kubrick's films often cater for a more mature audience, and that's not to say I am, but I think it comes sometimes from a period of a few watching years. Whereas when I watched The Shining for the first time, I loved it, but I can't say I fully understood it. And I think that's just maybe a maturity thing, an age thing, and I think a lot of the subtext gets lost. But, you know, when it comes to a horror film in general, just search, you know, the most iconic horror scenes, the most iconic horror sequences of all time. You'll see the peddler, whatever, the sequence. You'll see the door with blood, whatever it might be. You'll see the swinging back sequence. You'll see one of my all-time favourites when Jack is speaking to the barman. And I know as an adaptation, it's very different. And I know that it wasn't Stephen King's favourite. Stephen King notoriously didn't like The Shining, which is kind of understandable the way that it went. But I think I think the top 3 for me, or all 3, are just perfect films, and not even just on a technical level, just on a way of how much they offer in terms of not only just a thought-provoking narrative, but a fun to explore narrative as well, and one that gets you excited to speak about. That's my top 3. That is my top 3. And we're going to do the ordering after as well, like kind of how I would order each row. The final one, I believe, is Full Metal Jacket. It is. Full Metal Jacket will go into the great tier. No, it won't. It will go into, top 3, not top 3, great tier. Okay. Full Metal Jacket, I think Full Metal Jacket is incredible. I know a lot of people are a bit weird about how it goes in the final act, but I actually think the final act. I actually think the final act is a perfect amalgamation of what is happening. You know, you're kind of seeing the ending, and it, you know, the ending is supposed to showcase hell and kind of what the soldiers have been through, and kind of the fire is supposed to showcase that, and the devil and that sort of thing. And you've got the final scene where they're all surrounded her. I think it showcases war in a really unique way, especially the war at that time, and obviously Vietnam. It doesn't beat around the bush with it as well, I think. And then you've got the first with Vincent D'Onofrio, with the first hour, showing the kind of the psychology behind it, the psychology of the way the soldiers were treated, and the psychology behind war in general, and using Sergeant Pyle as a way to showcase that from just one character's format, to showcase the whole meaning of the first, portion of the film. I think it's so clever, and I think his performance is great as well. I think it's very, very entertaining, but it's very, very unique in the way that it's presented in terms of the war genre. You don't often see films like that, and I think it is, as much as this is an obvious thing to say, it's a Kubrick war film. It is in a way satirical. It is deep and layered with political subtext, whilst being incredibly entertaining and thoughtful, and also sincere with its approach as well. But yeah, so now comes the most important bit. I'm going to just kind of rank these in a way of each tier, and then we'll kind of get my Kubrick ranking. For this one, I would go Fear and Desire, be last, Killer's Kiss, and then Lolita. That works fine with me. Lolita could be in the higher end of the bottom tier Kubrick, and Fear and Desire be in the lower one. Perfectly fine. For this one, I would probably leave this the same, to be honest. The Killing and Spartacus being around the same level. Obviously completely different films, but around that same margin. Doctor Strangelove being the highest of the very good tier, and I have just realised something. We forgot Eyes Wide Shut. It's a good job I remembered, because I wouldn't have gone into it otherwise. Eyes Wide Shut, for me, it's a very unique film, and I think a lot of people actually I speak to have it in their favourite Kubricks. It's not my favourite. Again, similar to reasons I provided for Doctor Strangelove, where it's like, I can't pinpoint as to why. I love Nicole Kidman. She's one of my favourite actresses, and I love the approach this has. It is unique. It is weird. It's Kubrick, and it showcases this society, and if you can call it a Christmas movie, which it is, showcases this kind of underlevel society, and again has a society in terms of the deep meaning of the subtext. But I think more than that, it provides a fantastic script, visually a very unique and transcendent experience, much like most of Kubrick's work. I just think for me, it kind of got lost in translation a little bit with the narrative, and maybe I did think it was a little bit too sparse for the runtime again. Maybe that's just runtimes, maybe that's just a me issue in general. I do think it's very, very good though. So we're going to mix this up a bit now. I think Eyes Wide Shut would go here for me. So you've got Fear and Desire, Killer's Kiss, Lolita, then you got The Killing, Spartacus, Eyes Wide Shut, and Doctor Strangelove. These are around the same level in terms of my enjoyability and how good I think they are, and these are on the same level, so you realistically you could have it like that. But I think I'm going to leave it like that for now. But you could, it's very, very close in my opinion in those two films. This is perfect as well. You got Full Metal Jacket being around 6th place. And I've always said that this 6th place is where I really think they go from very, very good, around this area, to extremely good, nearing masterpieces in the top 3 being so. I would actually argue the Path to Glory as well, but, we'll get to that. Full Metal Jacket being 6th, which is, kind of the level where it goes extremely good. Clockwork Orange being 5th is perfectly fine for me. Path to Glory being 4th, a true masterpiece, in my opinion, just an incredible film. And then the only thing I would switch The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey. But with these, honestly, if you were to tell me 2001 is first, Barrylin's third, or The Shining's third, whatever it might be, it's fine. When it comes to film, it's preference. It's your enjoyability. It's your subjective view on what brings you the most entertainment on a technical level and also on a visual level. And in that regard, I think I would go Barry Lyndon first, I would go The Shining second, I would go 2001 third, but realistically you can mix and match with any Kubrick because his filmography is so vast and incredible and varied overall. You've got your period pieces, you've got your horrors, you've got your courtroom dramas, your war, you kind of dystopian sci-fi in a way, then you've got your true sci-fi, then you've got your political, war, comedic piece, you've got your kind of 60s Hollywood epic, you've got your crime, you've got so many genres in here, and that's why for me is one of my all-time favourite directors in general. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I didn't go on too long. I do get passionate when it comes to speaking about Kubrick's films because it's what makes me happy. Drop a like, drop a sub. Hopefully you have enjoyed this whole video. It's taken me a while to do, and I appreciate you watching. Drop a like, drop a sub, and let me know what you want me to do next.